everyone, and welcome for today's Cafecito. I hope everybody's enjoying and having a good day today. And I'm just so excited and thrilled to be joined here by Ortega Pittman today on this great topic and very important topic about thought leadership. Ortega, thank you so much for joining us today.
It is so nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Ileana. Hello to everybody that is joining us.
Thank you. So let's get started. What in your from your perspective and your point of view, and as a thought leader yourself, what is thought leadership, and why is it important for Latinas to embrace this concept in today's world, especially many of us, and I include myself until a couple of years, we don't realize that thought leadership is something that we need to keep in mind. We see it as something like far-fetched for somebody that's not me. Why is it something that we need to embrace no matter where we are in our careers?
That's a great question. My thought on that is thought leadership is when you, as an individual, have a voice. You know, you might be somebody that is a college student to an executive who listens to the news, experiences life, just experiences everything. And you have an opinion. You constantly are saying, I wish I could share my thought on that, or I agree with that, or I would love to sit down with what I don't understand, you know, with other opposing views. And it is someone who can articulate their voice in a certain space and really understand the growing dynamic or the existing dynamic that's happening at a deep level to the point where you can talk about it. One of the things, you know, when you think about a thought leader is different than somebody that just repeats content, if that makes sense. You're now putting your color, your views into it and having a voice. So if you're somebody that has that in you where you feel like I have something to say or I want to share my opinion and I have experience in a particular area, I would say that you probably are recognizing signs of being a thought leader, being an expert in a space or growing with a space that is evolving and relevant to the world.
And I love what you said about from a college student or any place that you are all the way through your career, being a thought leader. Like it's not unique to certain people in certain roles in certain industries in certain situations. It's just about expressing these personal experiences, which again, we can all be experts in something and can exert that opinion in a way that creates impact and that can create even more change for others and additional perspectives that maybe somebody or the person or the people that we're talking to might not have. And that in itself can be very enriching. I love that. However, there are unique barriers and challenges that many of us face, especially women, especially as Latinas, in trying to establish ourselves as thought leaders. Maybe it's something that we want to do, but we just haven't found a way to do it. And I've seen that again and again in many of my clients and the Latinas that we interact with, that we tend up sort of to say, again, that's for somebody else. What have you seen?
Yes, I think some of those challenges or barriers, like you said, I think they fall in different categories. They're not limited to what I'm about to say, but I think these are very relevant and will resonate. Some of them are internal, right? So if you are someone who is an evolving leader, you're going to do great things. You're doing great things now, but you've never had the opportunity or maybe the role model where you saw that person looks like me, sounds like me, sees the world like me. If that hasn't been in your life, you may have those motivations to be a thought leader, but you might not believe it in yourself. And you have to believe in yourself, anything that you go after. I've read so many different things where, it's like motivational things where people are encouraged to see themselves where you want to be. Like we might not all be in our final destination, but you see yourself like, I'm going to run that one day. I'm going to own that. That is me. You have to see it and then believe that you can then get there. So sometimes internally there are barriers. I think there are also barriers. I think there are also barriers sometimes, um, where you are. What are you doing in terms of your own space? I would encourage everybody on the call, whether you're 17 or 75, think about, where do I invest my time? Who am I with? Who am I pouring into? Who's pouring into me? Who am I aspiring to be? Barriers can be if you limit your circle, because when you broaden your circle, those barriers go away. New opportunities come about, and you discover new things about yourself that push you in directions that you might not have known before. I just wanted to make a comment as well to say that the Latina community is one of the fastest growing communities in the world. And I feel like from an industry standpoint, the buying power, the thought leadership opportunity, and that's really women and men of color, but especially within the Latina community, the opportunity to influence and have a voice is very influential. So recognizing and knowing what's going on around the world, what are the emerging markets, who am I, where do I fit into that should give you confidence as well in thinking about what you're talking about as an expert or an expert in the making.
There's several nuggets that you talk about that I think are critically important. One is the power of representation, which we continue to struggle with every day. But that doesn't, in this digital world, now we have access to, if you don't have somebody that you can relate to, or that you can get inspired by, or that can make you feel like you have that power because you see yourself in them. You can do that, virtually, right? Reaching out in spaces like this one, that we might not be physically in person, but we can still have those conversations, and I can still, be inspired and see myself in that. So I love what you're saying, not to limit our circles to just our environments and our spaces, but to take that step and move beyond using digital and technology, right? To be able to then use that and see those people that I can then look up to and say, oh, I can be that. I can be inspired. If they did it, then I can do it, and become a thought leader myself. And the other one that I want to really touch on is the power of the power that we have as a community to be able to influence and to be able to have a positive impact in the spaces that we are in. And I see that again and again, that the people, many of us don't feel we have that power. Many of us feel that, that's up to somebody else. This is wrong, but I'm just going to stay here. And how can I do something to change it? So we just stay silent and wait for somebody to magically, right, do something about it, and don't recognize that we can actually do something and become that thought leader to influence and to change for the better of ourselves, our families, our communities, and all of those that come behind us, especially being the fastest growing community that there is, right, currently. So
Yes.
how do we then gain that recognition to be able to position ourselves and believe that we can be those thought leaders?
So what I'm hearing from you is, how do you establish that credibility? I think one of the things for me, when you talk about thought leadership and credibility, I look for, and I believe that people should be knowledgeable in what it is you're venturing out to talk about. It's a credibility thing if you put yourself out there to talk about something and it's incorrect, or maybe you're not translating current state the right way, or you're confusing different points. It's important to be knowledgeable and just competent in what it is that you're going to talk about, because you have like 2 seconds to to establish credibility with people, especially when it's virtual. If they start reading something, they're like, what is this? This number was from last year, for example. That's a problem. Or Sometimes there's research that comes out that's factual and it's a point of reference, but then we hear news that says, oh, there are updates to that. And if you're not with the current state of whatever's happening, that could be a credibility issue. One of the things, though, that stands out to me when I think about credibility, regardless of what you're talking about, it could be investments, it could be sustainability, it could be DEI, it could be anything, any topic, is I feel like a credible thought leader understands all sides, both sides, all sides, whatever it is. You're someone who has a voice on the topic, but you also understand and can speak to all parts of it. I think that's a credibility thing. You might not agree with it, but I think, people look for, trusted resources that are speaking on something. Trusted meaning, you can speak confidently from both sides, or you can reference things that are material and are relevant, right? It's not just your opinion all the time, but it's market driven or supported. I think credibility is also being consistent. So sometimes, from a thought leadership standpoint, people might put their foot out, and do something, but they don't do it consistently. If you want to be a thought leader and you want to be known for being associated in a certain space and recognized for that, you have to be consistent, and it takes work. And I believe everybody has the possibility, in doing that, but consistency, I think, is also part of that credibility. And also being able to respond to feedback sometimes. Now, you're certainly, when we're dealing in global spaces, depending on what we're talking about, you can get feedback, comments, inquiries. Credibility also comes into appropriately responding to people. We can't respond to everybody. It's just not possible. But when it makes sense, when you can, or maybe you restate something in a post or something to clarify, you need to respond. So thought leadership is a brave space. It's not a space where you go and it's like, oh, I get my feelings hurt, I'm not gonna answer that. This is a place of bravery and motivation and knowledge that you're sharing. So those are my thoughts as it relates to credibility.
I love that. And I actually just wrote it down because I'm going to use it as a quote from Ortega. Thought leadership is a brave space. And I think that is very true. And we don't see it that way. And it just adds a different perspective and a different layer. And you also talk about somebody that is open to hearing and to listen, to actively listening to others' perspectives, no matter how different they are from us. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned it, right? We don't have to agree with them, but we need to be open to listening and seeing, what's the phrase? Like putting yourself in other people's shoes, like seeing things through other people's eyes, mm-hmm. so that then you can either bridge those differences and be able to have a thoughtful conversation on why what you believe is, I don't want to say it's true, but why what you believe is something that you are validated by these things, but then can bridge the gap versus the other person's perception and idea. Mm-hmm. And who knows, maybe there's an in-between, right?
Somewhere in there. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And, something else when you were talking made me think too. I think something to think about with thought leadership is I'm attracted to, and I tend to be inspired when I read something where someone makes a point, like they tell stories. I consider myself to be a storyteller. When they tell stories that connect dots that I've never connected before, or I see something differently and I'm like, I didn't know that connected that way from an industry standpoint. A lot of what, when I think about sustainability and the area that I'm working in now, and, sometimes people think about it in very like narrow lanes, but it impacts the knowledge, the thought leadership, the industries that are impacted and the what's possible. It's industry agnostic. It's every industry from water to aviation to financial services. but being able to tell stories where people understand how to make connections they would have never thought of before, and that it inspires them to do something different.
I love that. And you're right. It just opens you to a new world that maybe to seeing things that maybe you did not see in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And that can in itself create additional positive impact and positive change. Now we are in a very fast paced world where things seem to change almost every day, if not several times a day. And with that, also there's this trend of cancel culture, right? And very quickly, like you can be at the top of the world one day and then 3 tweets after you're
Yeah.
not necessarily there, right? So how can a thought leader maintain that? Because you talk about that credibility, like how can you maintain a credibility once you've done your due diligence, because it takes a long time, and stay authentic, so that you can still be outside of all of that noise, and keep it that way?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I don't know that I can give a definitive, this is how you avoid being canceled, because the world is so diverse and very dynamic right now, right? In terms of the pulse of people and the way they respond to things. But what I would say and feel comfortable saying is, in terms of cancel culture and how you can reduce the risk of it, I think is a safe way to put it, would be to be credible, like we said, and be thoughtful in your you're obviously sharing your opinion and thought leadership, but be thoughtful in the context of your opinion, when you're saying something. So we all know that there's certain topics that are kind of neutral, then there are ones that are highly sensitive, or highly emotional, or what have you, political. When you're a thought leader, again, and you're out globally talking to the world, you have to be thoughtful in what you're saying and the context of it, and think about, like, what are the potential responses to this? Let me think about how every angle I can think of could take this. Am I saying this right? Is this appropriate? Is this professional? Or is this just me, just writing as, Tiga on a Saturday? You have to, I think, to avoid cancel culture, you are always wearing your professional, thoughtful hat. It's not like when you're, and this is just an example, but I'll just say on other social media platforms that are more casual. Everybody uses them differently, but more like family posts and that kind of thing, and your opinion, or be thoughtful. Where are you channeling your thought leadership, and how wide is that exposure? And what is the appetite for casual versus more thoughtful things that you're saying? So you have the responsibility as the thought leader to be mindful of that. Ask people to read your work before you publish it, until you get further down where you're more confident in what you're doing. Ask people to read it. Talk to people that don't agree with you, and really mature what it is that you're trying to do, because otherwise you're opening too much risk, and you're too valuable for that. I would hope everybody took these suggestions.
I love that, and especially the part of talking to people that we don't agree with, so that we can then gain that perspective and then make our own decision, right? Of what do I take from this? What do I know, and how do I bridge that gap? But in a more and I didn't want to use the word thoughtful, but in a more thoughtful decision, right? Because you're educated decision, because now you've gathered more information, even though it might be different than what you believe in or what you know to be true from your point of view. But I think we don't talk to as many people that we disagree with as we should, because then we get our emotions take over, and it's natural, right? Many of us tend to try to convince the other person,
Right.
like, you're wrong, I'm right, and that's it, and that stops the conversation. So then go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with you.
So what makes then a great thought leader?
A great thought leader. So I'm going to think about people that I admire as thought leaders. They have characteristics in the following category. What they're talking about is relevant to me. So I tend to follow and admire thought leadership in spaces that I care about. So if somebody is consistent and they're talking about the financial services market, or they're talking about real estate. I love real estate. I love beautiful real estate. And they're talking about real estate. They're talking about things that I'm enthusiastic about. The topics range. Food. I like really good food. Analyst, right? If we keep it in the professional conversation, analysts that are talking about dynamics in the market that are political, that are emotionally charged, all these different things. I tend to follow thought leaders that speak to both sides. So they have a weighted, balanced perspective that I don't really know what they believe in. That makes a great thought leadership to me, but they're serving me information that is informative. It's credible. Sometimes it's inspiring. Those are things that resonate with me. I also like thought leaders that talk about different topics and relate them broader than the topic, if that makes sense. Some people would say, well, if I want to know about the market, I'm going to read about the market. I don't want to know about anything else. But I would, the anything else would be, how does that relate to other things that I care about? So a lot of us are in professional roles, but we support and work with nonprofits, or we might volunteer in certain spaces that are completely removed from our professional life. Thought leaders that are talking about things like I was saying, the market, or they're talking about education, or they're talking about travel, and they're relating it to things that relate to extensions of my life. I like that. So an example of that would be, there are a lot of things with fashion. This is a very broad example, but like fashion, the fashion industry, I had an opportunity to work with a couple years ago, a couple designers, and it was interesting what they were talking about, the way we're, ruining the Arctic Ocean and the fish, and we're, just destroying the planet a little bit. But it helped me to understand why I should pay attention to recyclable textile clothes, right? I like fashion. So that made me think about it differently. So something that was talking about the Arctic Ocean and, science and those kinds of things, it resonated with me because I make buying choices that also connected to. So thought leadership that connects beyond the topic that I'm reading, that it affects me broader. And that's an art for people to do that effectively, I think.
I love that, and you brought up a good point that it's not just about our expertise and the spaces and the topics that we normally navigate,
Mm-hmm.
around, but also opening up to one thing can lead to another, that can lead to another, that in a way aligns with your values, with your principles, with what you believe in or what you're interested in, or even open up new things that you hadn't thought of, like this example that I hadn't even thought of. Now I'm curious. Now I'm going to go and research
Do
on
some
that. But that's,
research. That's good.
I'm going to do some research. But that's exactly a perfect example of, I did not know it, and now it sort of, sparked my curiosity to be able to go and find out more about something that then can bring us back, and inspire that passion to
Mhm.
drive that change. I love this. Thank you so much for the conversation. I know that we could continue on, but we're almost at time. Any closing remarks?
Um, Thank you for having me today. I have joined your cafecitos in the past with some other industry experts out here. So thanks for having me. And I would just encourage everybody that's on the call to challenge yourself and think about, where is my voice? And is that in a place that I have solid knowledge or could really influence and help the world be a better place. If that is you, I would encourage you to go after that and begin or start tightening your craft, and don't be afraid. You have a lot to offer, and you have, I always say, buying power and influence within the communities. And I would say go for it. So thank you so much. And I appreciate you having me today, Ileana.
Thank you so much, Ortega. And thank you, everybody. Just quick reminder of our upcoming events. We have our Latina Speaker Circle happening for all of you premium members. And if you're not a premium member, you can also come this time around. You can look at the registration on our website, unitedlatinas.com. That's happening tomorrow. And then we have our next event on building your power with Brenda Terry about limitations and liberations, where she's going to take us through different exercises on tapping so that we can then continue to reinforce our power and the power that we have within. And then save the date for our Hispanic Heritage Month Summit, which is happening on October 12th. We have just an amazing lineup of speakers. We're going to start releasing them in a couple of weeks so that you see we have a lineup of about 18 speakers, all just bring a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of passion, a wealth of purpose. And we're just going to have a great, great time. So thank you so much for that. And visit us for anything at all. We're here to serve you, to build this community, and just to support each other to thrive. Thank you so much, Ortega, for being here with us today. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day wherever in the world you are. Have a good one.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.